And welcome everybody, and welcome to CLAG's event on this Thursday evening. We're going to chat about trans activism. But before we start to talk about our topic for today, I would like to introduce our CLAG's board co-chair, Laura Westengard. Laura Westengard is an associate professor of English at New York City College of Technology, City University of New York, and CLAG's board co-chair. Laura is also an author of Gothic Queer Culture, Marginalized Communities, and the Ghosts of Insidious Drama, and will share some information about CLAGs with all of us. This event is recorded and it is live streamed. So since this is a meeting, people can turn on their cameras if they want. But please note that if your camera is on, you become visible to everybody. So I will invite people to turn on their cameras toward the end when we're having Q&A and having conversations. So Laura, I'm going to hand you the mic.
Thank you so much, Yasmina, and thanks to all of you for joining us today at CLAGS. I am Laura Westengard. My pronouns are she or they, and I am the board co-chair of CLAGS. And I just want to tell you a little bit about CLAGS and ask for your help so that we can continue to offer this kind of conversation and free and public programming in the future. So CLAGS is the first university-based LGBTQIA+ research center in the United States. And as such, we nurture interdisciplinary cutting-edge knowledge production in queer and trans studies. At CLAGS, we strive for an intersectional definition of queer and commit to merging issues of sexuality and gender with race, indigeneity, class, disability, nationality, colonialism, environmental justice, and globalization. CLAGS is dedicated to maintaining accessible public programming, fellowships, and initiatives that join academics, artists, activists, policymakers, and community members in dialogue and conversation. We are committed to radical visions of a queer past, present, and future within and beyond CUNY and on the national and global level. But we can't do it without you. Your support of CLAGS is critical to establishing a legacy dedicated to the study of LGBTQ+ historical, cultural, and political issues. So please consider making a donation to CLAGS, and your gift will afford our community and scholars the opportunity of one-of-a-kind experiences that celebrate scholarship, art, and activism from the voices of the LGBTQ+ community. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat, and whether your gift is $10 or $100, it has a significant impact on the lives of students and our community now and in the future. So again, welcome, and I invite you to contribute and to drop your questions in the chat too, in case we have the opportunity to answer those for you. And thanks again. I will turn it over back to Yasmina.
Thank you. I am here managing also the spotlight for all of us. I do want to acknowledge that at least those of us who are in New York right now and are on the unceded land of Lenape-Hoking, and that I just want to invite us all to be mindful of that, whatever that means to all of us. It should not just end at us acknowledging, and perhaps this is a conversation we can all have later and share what are the things that we can do. So I would like to invite my two conversants, two speakers, two friends, really. So I will be bringing them on. And there's Jennifer. Okay, here is the four of us. So Jennifer and Janice are dear friends and colleagues, and I would say co-conspirators in this universe of trying to survive. And I'm going to start by introducing Jennifer, and then I will introduce Janice, and then I will ask them to share about their work. So Jennifer Love Williams is a formerly incarcerated Black trans woman, an entertainer, and an activist. She's the foundress of the Gen Love Project, a nonprofit that provides home packages to recently released and soon to be released LGBTQ plus people coming home from prison, jail, and serves as a co-chair of the formerly incarcerated subgroup of the National LGBT HIV Criminal Justice Working Group. She works with the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. And if we can drop the link to Gen Love Project in a chat, that would be great. Janice has helped with planning of the 2021, 22, 23 queer liberation marches and is helping on planning the 24 queer liberation march, is on the board of Indigenous Peoples Day Philly and helps plan Philly Trans March events. Janice currently gives classes to homelessness orgs for trans inclusion. She's a guest lecturer at various universities for trans and two-spirit cultural trainings, and has given classes on two-spirit and transgender to the community and corporations classes. Janice was a co-chair of the Philadelphia Trans Wellness Conference for 5 conferences, worked 11 years with the planning committee. Janice is co-founder of East Coast Two-Spirit Society, co-founder of NCTE, and is an electric engineer with extensive project management experience. She has also spent significant time on workplace issues, transgender insurance coverage, workplace inclusion, racial equality, gender equality, and housing for low-income and homeless trans people. I myself am a non-binary person. I teach at City College of New York, and I'm CLAG's Director of Development and Finance. I'm originally from the Balkans, from Yugoslavia. Yeah, and I'm involved in so many things that I'm actually not going to mention right now. So, welcome to Jennifer and Janice, and I'm going to start us off with Jennifer. Jennifer, tell us a little bit more about your work.
Hello, everyone. Um, when it comes to my work is centered around abolition and getting everyone to a safe space, especially upon re-entering back into the so-called free world and exiting modern-day slavery. And how did I land in this field of work? Well, myself, I am formerly incarcerated, and I'm a person who happened to be caught up in a situation that left me with being damned if you do, damned if you don't, so to speak. So I happened to just be a casualty, but it opened my eyes to the reality of incarceration that I never knew existed. In that process,
Jennifer, Jennifer, sorry, we're having a little harder time.
hearing me,
Yeah,
I apologize. Hold on 1 second. What about now?
better,
Okay. What about now?
better.
All right. Okay. I apologize. Do you want me to back up some or just continue where I was at?
Um, I'm gonna ask if maybe people
That
who are in
means
the
back up
audience,
some, right?
maybe a little bit, and then people who are in the audience can also, like, if anybody else has difficulty, just, I guess, let us know.
Okay. Well, once again, I apologize about that. As a formerly incarcerated Black trans woman, I got exposed to the realities of the incarceral system and how unjust the so-called system is. And it made me realize that also I thought my job was done as a good human by performing for free and donating tips to certain causes that affect Black people, queer people, trans folk. I thought my job was done if I performed for free and donated my tips or donated my pay. Then I realized that no, I got a lot of life to live. And in that life that I'm living, I have to be present, not just be visible for myself, but be visible for others. And sometimes it's easy to cast aside what people say to you, but when you have a face to it and a physical body there with the lived experience, it's hard to deny those facts of a person's lived experience, which means I have to put myself on the forefront and bring along others so we can help others get the freedom that they deserve, get the respect that they deserve, and get the safety and healthcare that they deserve. In a better way to say it.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? Um, so Janice, would you share a little bit about
Yes.
your work?
Yes, I can do that. I can share a little bit. I will keep it succinct. All right. So I've been doing activist type work for almost 50 years now. Well, over 50 years now. From standing up to the Klan to trying to get health care for trans people to trying to make sure that we don't lose the rights that we've got today. Right. So it goes. It's not just activism; it's organizing and advocacy and lobbying work that I've done along the way in order to try to make sure that we can advance. And just so people are clear, things are much better today than they were 50 years ago. Right. 50 years ago, I thought I would get arrested for just being on the street for who I was. Today, we can be ourselves, and we're not getting arrested in most states for wearing clothes that don't match the sex that they assigned us at birth. Trying to make sure that stays that way because outlawing clothes just makes no sense to me. So along the way, I've worked on something called Klan Watch, which was a branch of the Southern Poverty Law Center and is now called Hate Watch, which people often refer to when they're trying to track hate organizations. When HIV hit, we were trying to find housing for people who had HIV and trying to make sure that they got health care. And that had its own history to it. And then when it came around to trans activism, I've been open and visible for a long time now. And I think that's part of what it takes to be to make change is that a lot of people need to know who we are. There have been studies saying that a lot of people have never met a trans person, but they have, they just don't know it, right? So I make sure they know it. I make sure hard that they know it, right? I worked with trying to get healthcare coverage for trans people. The first two shelters that actually homeless shelters that accepted trans people, I helped set them up. There was a battered women's shelter that I helped to make inclusive of trans people, helped to get inclusive of trans people. We still fight for healthcare issues. We've only been able to eliminate some of the barriers. We are not fully inclusive at this point, in my opinion. Activism, organizing, lobbying, that's all just been part of my life. It's just part of it. I've got my other life as an engineer. I currently work in fair housing, so I help people who are not trans, as well as people who are trans, to make sure that they're not being discriminated against in housing in Pennsylvania. So I've got a long history of activism. That's it. Back to you, JZ. Jasmina. You're on mute.
Yes, thank you. So I think what I would like to do is have maybe open up with some questions, and then also if people have questions, feel free to drop them in chat. This is envisioned, or I envisioned this as sort of an open conversation where people ask respectful questions that shouldn't probably, I probably don't even need to say that, right? Everybody here is in love and support. But if people have questions, please do drop them in the chat. Or just raise your hands and we'll call on you. And if you hear howling in my background, it's because my cat is having a lot to say as well. So please ignore the beauties of doing this work from everywhere we are, right? So some of the questions, both of you mentioned the importance of things like housing and safety and just sort of like the basic needs and advocacy around that. And often when people talk about activism, there's a focus on some of the, I guess, what seems to be different questions, but we all have these needs. We all have the needs for housing. We all have needs for safety. Either one of you, if you want to jump in and share, like why were these things, like why housing specifically you think is one of the important things to focus on, and specifically in a trans context, but also if you want to open it up.
All right. You want me to go ahead, Jennifer?
Yeah.
It's up to you.
All right. Well, food, shelter, healthcare are fundamentals that trans people have often not always been guaranteed. We don't get the healthcare that we need when we ask for it or when we need it, and we don't get the shelter we need. So the housing comes into an issue. So when it comes to renting a place, landlords can be prejudiced, and if you transition after you've got an apartment, a lot of places you can lose your apartment for having done that. All right, so trying to make sure that trans people have housing is important in that regard. Another issue becomes people who are young and their families throw them away, or they run away because they're being abused at home, or they don't have family that will take them in. Those people wind up being on the streets. They're homeless. They're kids. Trying to figure out how to make enough money to pay for rent becomes a huge issue if you're 15 years old. Trying to make sure that there's some place where those children can go, that they're not just freezing on the street, has always been a critical thing to me. And make sure that they can get the health care they need once they get into the housing and the food. But housing's important, because living on the street as a young trans person is incredibly dangerous for getting diseases. It's incredibly dangerous for getting killed. It's just for getting arrested and put in prison. So what you need to do, if you're not home, if you don't have a place to call home, becomes desperation in a lot of ways, and that becomes a problem in and of itself. Anything you want to add, Jennifer?
There's a lot of times when it comes to housing, a lot of the non-trans community or passing part of the trans community tends to overlook the fact is that there are a lot of trans folks that are not going to be able to just walk in the everyday world and pass. And then some are met with the intersectionality of being black or brown, and that plays an extra layer of discrimination that a lot of people don't get. There are people who they had stable housing all this time, and upon transitioning, all of a sudden now you've become the tenant from hell, allegedly, and they want you out. Or if you're in transition to find home, no matter how much physical cash you have on hand, they don't want you there. It's a very tough situation, and it's often overlooked in a lot of places, even like the tri-state area, which is supposed to be so great in all this funding that's here. It's lack of help for trans folk, and it's bad. It's a lot worse than we think, or than people know, rather.
It is, and one of the things that we actually rely on are places like CLAGS to do research on that kind of thing, on the homelessness of trans people and put out reports. So that's part of what we use for advocacy in order to try to push for more funding and change, coupled with activism. Activism is pretty much getting into people's faces, letting them know we're here and we exist and we deserve to exist. The advocacy portion of it, we need universities, we need medical people to do studies and issue studies, which give us credibility for making change with lawmakers when we do and lobby things. So it becomes a family type of thing, intersectional actions across everything. When we talk about activism, a lot of people mean all of these things wrapped together, and some people actually understand the difference between activism and advocacy and lobbying and organizing and trying to pull it all together into something that can actually create change going forward. So thank you to CLAGS. Please donate to CLAGS.
Thank you. Um, Thank you. And do you actually, that's an interesting that you were just brought up, this difference between what is advocacy and what is activism, and how often these things work together but are also separate. Do you want to elaborate that a little bit? Just so, because I do think there is a confusion, and I do think that sometimes, like you mentioned, like things that some of us do as scholars and at CLAGS and other places where people are doing this research can then be used. So, where would something like that, where would like this scholarship fall in?
Well, it falls into advocacy, I think, right? So with activism, we as a group of people with a common, as I understand it, we as a group of people with a common issue or a common cause, if you will get together and do things. We'll make ourselves visible. We'll go out and protest this or march over here. We get awareness up in the public that we exist. Or with advocacy, they do the research behind it. And then we can link that advocacy and well, advocacy is also where the activists go and work with other people to build allies. But part of that that's needed is the research from universities and from the studies and some level of statistics, or at least a collection of stories, right? And then we can use that to go to lawmakers, which is lobbying, and try to make change. And we can organize to bring in more of our people into the situation, but also to bring in people that are allies in to help us, to coordinate with us across all of these issues. So there's a host of things in play in order to be able to make it all work. And it doesn't work if you forget one of the wings of that. So when we were working on trying to get healthcare for trans people, the first step was to get statistics on it, and then the next step was to lobby lawmakers to try to make changes, because back then there were exclusions. If you said you were trans, they wouldn't treat a broken leg on some instances. The trans exclusion was that broad. So we worked to try to get the awareness up of the trans issues with lawmakers, and the lawmakers going, well, it doesn't make sense that I don't care who you are, it doesn't make sense that the trans exclusion applies to broken legs. And they understood that. So we were able to eliminate the trans exclusion along the way by doing this interplay of outreach and advocacy and activism, and pulling together the research for lobbying. Anything you want to add, Jennifer?
Can y'all see me better?
There
I
she
am so
is.
sorry for it being so dark. I'm in the car. Bear with me. Um, I need a back. I need a briefer, a buffer. Sorry, my mind's 1,001 places.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Jennifer?
Can you fill me back in on what you just said? I was having some
Uh,
technical difficulties over here.
I was talking about the difference and the interplay between advocacy, activism, lobbying and organizing, and allies and that kind of thing. So I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that or not. Maybe you can talk about all the kinds of things that you need to do to work on trying to improve prison conditions or conditions for people when they're released. Because it's not all just activism. It's not just all getting in the street. It's working with lawmakers and with a host of other non people that have not been into prisons. And for trans people in prisons, I'm sure there's needs that they have that while they're in prison that need to be met. So
Let me say this. When it comes to the whole, I'm an activist. I'm an abolitionist. I'm for the cause. There are so many people who are self-appointed abolitionists, self-appointed activists, and things of that nature. And at the end of the day, you can't. You sitting here showing up to one rally, or you sitting here and sharing a post or two. I am thankful if it's the motivating, spreading the word of the cause type post. But when you are an activist, that means you live and breathe this. If you are an abolitionist, your life is on the line for what you believe in every day, all day. When you are an advocate, that means that you are listening to the people that you are advocating for and being their vocal piece when they cannot. It's we're in a time where everybody wants to have in their tribe, in their profile, in their profiles, in their bios to make themselves look like they're here, and yet they live a very different life than what they preach. That's not okay. People want to be able to rely on activists, abolitionists, advocates, um, and proper allies, real allies. People want to be able to know that they have someone fighting for them, fighting with them. Not just for right now because you want to be on TV, not just for right now because you want to be in a social media post, not just because you want to be social media famous. Not for that. When you do this work, you're supposed to be doing it from the heart. Even if it's because you have a loved one inside, or if you have a loved one or know someone who's going through the same struggles or went through these struggles, so be it. That's reason to be out here to help prevent others from going through that. Things of that nature, because so often we're in a time where everybody just wants to be seen, everybody wants to be important, and right now, it's that's the way to be. People will show up to events to take up space, and then next week you'll never hear from them again. They just want to fill a personal quota inside, and that's fine if that's your thing. But don't sit here and muddle the waters when people need people who are less fortunate and people who are voiceless truly need people who want to be there for them. Don't get me wrong, everything helps. But don't sit up here and blur the lines and take up the space and suck up all the air and funding from people who are truly doing the work for those who are not able to.
You're here for that.
Thank you. Which actually links us. We have a question in our chat or a comment that says, "Thank you for doing this. I wanted to ask." This is from Jen. Jen, also, if you want to speak for yourself, feel free to raise your hand, or something, and I think I can turn on your camera. But the question is, or the comment is, "I'm finally at the stable place in my life where I can do something. I would appreciate if you could share any resources or recommendations." So Jennifer, that brings us to your comment where you said that, it's not enough to, I mean, it's nice to support, right? Like, it's nice to support with like posts or reposts and things like that, but that's in itself not enough. To get things changed. That may be enough to like amplify certain things, but not really enough. For real change, we need to work and really invest the time and energy and lives into making a change. So if either one of you has, and this is something, if you have recommendations, feel free to speak up now, or maybe at the end, if we have ideas, we can drop in chat where like people can get involved. I would say it might be locally, so it may depend where you are. Though there are some obviously national organizations where people can also get involved. So I don't know if either one of you want to mention something now, or we can leave it for later.
Let me say this. Now, people also don't think that you have to do everything on a big scale either. There's things like you brought up locally. There's things locally. LGBTQ youth, trans youth, trans seniors, LGBTQ seniors, senior citizens in general, even if it's about the animals, whatever your passion is, you can start locally. If you know that you have every Saturday off and you want to go to the shelter and feed some people, then that's something different. That's doing the work. That's putting yourself there on your own, because you still got to make a living and you still got to be you. That's something different. That's somebody who I can respect because you're doing the work. You didn't show up. You didn't show up today, and then tomorrow you're putting in a grant, and you got a whole loan and a grant that you took, knowing you're not going to do the work because you're being shady. And you got people that you are targeting up all these people, because this is where there's a lot of nonprofits being created, and they're sucking up all this money, putting it to the people who they claim that they're supposed to be helping, such as reentry work, such as trans housing, such as am I breaking up?
A little bit.
Am I breaking up?
Yeah.
Ah, shit. Hold on. I'm sorry, Usher.
All right. Let me pick up from there. So, I don't do this to get famous. If I was completely unknown, I'd be
Because it seems like
happier
it's
than
the
I am.
end thing. And then
You're still breaking up, Jennifer.
it's never getting responses, never getting any help, not even getting a no. And in all actuality, you are just another person who muddies the waters, that makes people feel that they further people's fears because they have no one to trust. They have nowhere to turn. If, I hope I made sense to everybody. In my mind, it made sense because this is the reality that I had to deal with. I have a lot of conversations with a lot of other organizers of many different agencies and many different causes, and that's one of the leading problems that's here plaguing, especially when it comes to low-income people. They're relying on agencies that took money, that were giving money to help them, and they're not helping. They're not helping. They can't provide 2, 3 people that they've helped, and that's a bad thing. And it makes people untrusting to reach out for help, and it makes people who truly have money and want to donate to someone doing the work. It makes them not want to trust to even give up their money. Are you going to be another person like that? And that's why it's so important to be true to this and to make sure that you are being authentic in this. I meant to touch on it earlier. The word ally. Everybody, likes to say that as well. You cannot be an ally. I'm focused on the trans community right now. You cannot say that you are allies for the trans community, but yet tomorrow you will misgender someone. You will dead name someone. That's not being an ally. That's being full of shit. I'm hoping everybody watches this in the doubt. Excuse my language. A true ally is you're gonna fight for me and speak on my behalf in the best way possible, even when I'm not there. That I know, even in my time of turmoil, that you as my ally, you are truly advocating and being an activist and an ally for me, not just for the camera.
I'm going to agree
Thank you.
with all of that. So there's something I've worked on, a coming out guide for the Native American community that was distributed around the different reservations around the country, which has made change within the reservations in some of the reddest states, some of the most hostile places for us outside of the reservations. We have safe areas on, natives have safe areas on reservations, more safe areas than we used to. My name isn't associated with that, right? It isn't there. I was one of the first 4 people to come out, welcomed into Powwow Circle, Two-Spirit circle in California. One of the first 4 people welcomed in as trans-identified Two-Spirit people. We do that, and then we move on, right? So we're doing the things to make the change, not doing it for our own self-promotion. There's some level of self-promotion needed in order to get some funding, but you need to be very humble with what you're doing if you're going to work on something. So the question was, any resources or recommendations and where you can start doing something. All right. The first resource and recommendation I have is only one you can answer. What are you passionate about? Right. Doing activism isn't something to do as a pastime or as a semester class. It's something you do because you're kind of driven to do it. So what are you passionate about? You may not know much about doing it. You may not be able to do anything too great to begin with, but if you're passionate about it, you'll stick with it. So that would be the first step. And there's lots of places, local, community, such, that you can find a connection into whatever you're passionate about. Along the way, I was a member of North American Intersex Society. I was passionate about making sure that infants weren't getting non-consensual surgeries for their physical sex. We managed to get that, at least a statement from the American Medical Association saying this was a bad idea to do. Prior to that, they would take infants, mess up circumcisions, and then wind up giving them surgeries to give them vaginas because they burnt the child's penis off, and then raise the child as female without letting the child get to an age where they can understand what their sex, what their gender identity is, right? Gender identity tends to be fixed. Most people think somewhere between birth and 3 or 4 years old for the vast majority of people. There's some question about one group of people that could be trans. That's still in research. So giving the surgeries to children that are 6 months old, 9 months old, it is cruel. And I just worked on that. But then I don't I haven't done much since then. That was passionate for me to try to stop. We managed to move some things. And I moved on to the next thing that I'm passionate about at that point. So find what you're passionate about. Do some research on it. You'll find organizations that way. Um, it'll come to you if you understand what you're passionate about.
We had a comment on YouTube, and I was trying to figure out how to frame really this question. But the question was, how does this work interact with SQWYD groups within DSA, which is the group itself is Socialist Queer Worker and Youth Defense. So, or in more, I would say more generally, how does, when we think of large organizations that are not necessarily like their primary mission is not necessarily focus on trans or queer people, but we start seeing more and more people involved in these organizations that are looking at general rights, right? Like for humans, and therefore obviously for trans people who often need access to these rights. So in general, what do you think about this sort of like activism within the larger group? So like not specifically groups that are focusing on the trans-related social concerns, but more on like fighting for healthcare for all and just and free and affordable healthcare, and then that interacting with the assumption is that then that will provide healthcare, for example, for trans people if it's provided to all.
For me, that's how a lot of this work for me started. Um, in those spaces, oftentimes there's not every kind of person in that space. So everybody's mindset, even though like healthcare for all, for example, right? Um, as a Black trans person who needs healthcare, not just for my gender dysphoria, but for overall health, right? Being in a space like that is very important. And of course, while I'm there and I'm learning and I'm connecting and I'm networking, I am also going to highlight, just like other people are going to highlight their certain interest. I am going to highlight the trans lived experience, the trans need. I know when come home from this meeting, I know to speak to a few more trans people. What do you need me to say in this space? From your own point of view, for me to go back and be present. This is where visibility, regardless of what you're being visible for, it all matters. Like I said, as a trans person, there's often spaces that they're not talking about a trans issue. But and I have so many layers that make me the woman that I am. So I'm going to be in those spaces. When I find out that space is there, I'm going to try to get into that space and soak up that knowledge. Because even if they don't want to let me highlight, that's fine. I'm soaking up all the knowledge and all the connections I can get, and I'm still going to do my best to highlight in that specific topic, for example, healthcare. I'm going to acknowledge the importance of gender affirming care. I'm going to talk about the importance of having respectful facilities as a whole. Things like that. I don't want to let that action go to be actual when it came down to me getting into the world of fighting oppression of incarceration, modern day slavery. I was having an internal battle because I didn't know how the world would perceive me because I have the intersectionality. I know that Black people, um, which is my own race, are gonna feel like I don't want to hear about no trans shit. I don't want to hear about no LGBTQ type stuff. And in reality, then they will talk about Black as if it's everybody's Black, cis, and hetero. And I'm going to come in this space, but I'm going to highlight my lived experience, the lived experiences of other people just like me, and make sure it's understood that I'm here to count for us. I'm going to bring others along with me, and we're all going to learn. We're either going to work together for the common cause, which is to end the incarceration, or I'm just going to soak all this knowledge up and make these connections and go on into my own space to highlight us permanently in that space. but I'm going to be counted for. And it was very uncomfortable as a Black trans woman because I had to make sure y'all understood I'm here as a Black person, but I'm also here as a trans person and part of the LGBT community, and you would not make me erase one for the other.
Thank you.
I want to echo that. So representation in organizations is important. And if an organization typically wants to just do a high level approach to things without going through and listing or naming details at any point in time, I don't trust the organization, right? There's a saying I've got that I've noticed about human nature, right? Human beings tend to label or count or both what they care about. So we have names, right? Because people have cared about who we are or cared about the fact that we exist. We don't have just, A, B, 26 letters and everybody's one of the 26 letters. We all have unique names, or you have 4 children and their names are, right? How much money do you make? Do you count the cents? No, you count thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars, maybe. Maybe you don't make much. So actually the cents makes a difference. So what matters to you is what you count, right? How much do you weigh? How old are you? And that makes a difference in how you approach things. So that kind of representation has to be within organizations, and that level of detail and discussion needs to happen in those organizations as well, or that's just not going to do us any good in the long run, in my opinion.
Thank you. I am just checking if we have other audience questions, and if we do, and I missed it, I guess somebody nudged me because chat kind of flies by. So Jennifer, I see your hand up.
I do want to say one thing, that being in the world of activism, advocacy, allyship is very draining, and it'll make you fearful coming in. But it's 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 never, you're not gonna come into something knowing everything, and you're not gonna come into nothing having the answers for everything, even in everyday life. We are born having no knowledge and we have to grow and learn it, right? So it is okay if you feel that you have something inside you to give, and you see some social media posts for rallies, for moments where you can come and fit in and learn and ask some questions. Moments like watching this panel, having signing up for free to come and get a link to come watch this, so you can hear, and these things may help you form your mind. There's a lot that I advocate for now that was never on my radar before, but it wasn't nothing that I even knew about. However, me sitting in spaces and being and understanding that in the world of activism, abolitionist, and being even an ally, that networking and partnership is so important. So even though certain topics may not affect me personally, you never know, you never know who you may come across that may need your help or your knowledge or your connection, such as women with children, people who can bear children, birth children, or people who have parental control over children, people who have citizenship issues, all of these things, people who are disabled. Um, there's a lot of layers that the elderly, I'm not there yet. Don't be rushing me to get there. Even when it comes to that, there's a lot of layers to this crazy world that we're in, that a lot of people need advocates for, and people to be alliances with them. And as you sit down and learn, especially with the virtual aspect. So you don't have to leave your home. You can listen to it while you're on an above ground train. You can listen to it while you're in a light rail, while you're in the car. Just sit in here and listen, and it may help you say, "Hey, I want to go see what's next." And I may even want to email y'all, "Hey, when can I come out to help with something so I can get more of a sense?" There is no rule that says, "Hey, I have to become activist today." Even being an ally is something amazing. Just do it and do it with love, and don't do it for the gram.
Thank you. And Janice, sorry, did you want to add?
I was going to say, activism it takes time to learn what you're doing. When my first actions, the first things I did, I had no clue about anything, right? First march I was in, we were getting rocks and eggs thrown at us. I had no idea how everybody pulled everything together. I had no idea how everybody got on there, got in the street, the route, none of that, right? So you get involved, you do some small things along the way. The small things actually matter, huge, right? But you need to understand that activism can it's often scary, right? So you're getting into people's faces, or you're out in places and standing in front of people that don't want you standing there, all right? Or you're getting out in front of people who don't like you and getting them used to seeing you and breaking down some barriers. Activism, the actual activism part of activism can be scary, all right? So you need to make sure that you take care of yourself first. Make sure you're safe, take care of yourself. If you burn out or if you hurt yourself, you can't help somebody else. Right.
Thank you. And thank you for that great reminder. I think often those of us who are in this work forget to take care of ourselves. Like it's easy because it feels sometimes like the world is just too much and there's just too much to do that, we don't have time to take a break. Especially I see a lot of youth, our youth, our young people that are some of them just starting, and there's this need to do it all and solve it all. So, which kind of brings me, and this is my last question, and I will say at this point, definitely if people have questions in the audience, make sure you drop it in the chat so we don't miss you. But my sort of wrap-up question is, in my experience with variety of movements and organizing, one sees in all the social justice organizing, the anti-imperialist, um, the anti-occupation movements, like a lot of that organizing has a lot of queer people. Like I often see a lot of queer, a lot of trans, a lot of gender nonconforming people as sort of drawn to participate in these movements. Um, and I wonder, do you have any thoughts? Like, what is it, and this is not to say that obviously there are plenty of trans folk who are not into organizing in that sense, but why do you think we see such a large presence in some of the social justice groups of our trans youth?
Why do we see it of which group?
Um, why do we see why do we see such a large presence? Like, why does it seem to me, and maybe I'm being subjective, so like it is possible that I see what I want to see, but it seems to me when I go to a lot of marches, a lot of protests that are dealing with general social justice issues, there's often a large contingent of trans youth, trans people in general, not just youth, um, that are leading or participating. And I wonder if there is something about, I guess, our experiences that are kind of encouraging or making one more likely to join fights against other types of oppressions.
I think that my personal opinion, I could be wrong. I think that we're tired. Um so many of us have the trans umbrella in general. So many of us have a lot of intersectionalities, whether we see it, whether the world sees it or not. At the same token, being tired. Um, Starting from Stonewall and the thing that we celebrate Pride as. That's trans women. Be trans women tired. Trans people, queer people have been here being vocal, fighting, preparing the fights because we couldn't be the ones in the front, but preparing them for years, for decades. And there's now, I guess we're tired of also letting so-called straights take the credit for the work that we're doing. So it's to be, you know, let me be visible on my own instead of you taking all the credit for all of my work and all of my siblings' work. But I think that we're just tired, and this is something I'm glad you brought that question up because I did a panel and I made it a previous panel and I made it clear you'll be surprised how much trans and queer folks get up out here and fight. We're not just fighting for our visibility. We're not just fighting to be counted for. We're also fighting for others. However, others don't want to fight for us. Others want to beat us up. Others want to kill us and erase us. But it's cool when we're out here fighting for everybody else, including ourselves. Yet we're at the bottom of the barrel, always. And it's sad. But I think that with this energy that especially the youth are having, I am excited to become elderly and see the amazing ground that they make, the amazing ground that they get to cover with the fight that's in them. This is a lot of fight and a lot of these young queer folks, a lot of young trans folks, and I am extremely proud of these babies because they're able to we don't understand a lot of terminologies. We don't understand a lot of breakdown of identity. That's fine. They know how to express themselves and let you know exactly who they are. You may not like it, but my generation, oh, I couldn't do that. I wasn't so articulate on what makes me me. I'm 47 and I feel like that articulate about what makes me me. So I get excited when I see a young folk with so much guff inside of them that they can let you know who they are and you see their passion and when you give a lot of them the mic and you've seen it when we was at the rally Creative Racial March rally this year, 23, you got to hear the and at our town hall that young baby speak and the drag performer was very one of them was very young as well. And I was in awe because I'm seeing young people just be so passionate, speaking with understanding of self, which is most importantly. And it's just a beautiful thing. And I'm looking forward to the amazing ground that they get to cover and what they get to change for me before I get out of here. Exit stage left. I'm excited.
Thank you.
I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna say, hey, yay to what Jennifer just said in that regard. Um, I think trans people, social justice, we have to have social justice to survive, right? And a lot of kids these days are actually being allowed to be themselves. Right? The idea that I could have gone to school and told people my pronouns were she, her, right? Is so incredibly foreign to me. It's just all right. It just isn't there. I got beat up for my mannerisms back then. If I'd have told them my pronouns were she, her, oh, I think the principal and the entire school would have started beating up on me, not just a couple of kids, right? So the kids are learning about things. They're learning age appropriate information about gender identity and sexuality and gender expression. And when they see how the world really is, they want to shake it up and fix it. And they're getting involved in a whole lot of things. When we did this in the 70s, we worked across some of those boundaries initially. And eventually broke down because there was a lot of racism within the LGBT community towards people who weren't were different colors or weren't in the LGBT community. I shouldn't say LGBT, in the LG community back then. T's got thrown on the bus pretty early. So fighting for things in social justice is just it's our life breath. We don't survive without it. It doesn't surprise me people are there. What I'm incredibly impressed with is the young people, right? The young people today are willing to go out and get in people's faces and risk things and make change. I haven't seen that since before HIV hit, right? HIV hit, a lot of activists who would do that died. And we went into survival mode as a community trying to survive HIV. Now we're coming out of that, and this generation is incredible. I think they're going to make some significant changes if they can stay on target. So,
Thank you. Yeah, and I think both of the things that you said, both of you said, are really resonating, both in terms of how much the words we had or didn't have and things we could say or not say, and also the reflection of what it meant for all of us as a community to come out of the 80s and AIDS crisis and 90s and a lot of that, and that how that affected um just our psyche. And yes, on being really impressed. I feel like people like to make fun of Gen Zs, but I'm like, they're so amazing to me, like really incredibly inspiring and amazing. Um, I do,
we
and I feel like we can
we
all
lost
learn. It's, sorry.
we we lost several generations of activists in the 80s and 90s, right? The old ones, the middle-aged ones, the young ones. People were getting HIV and dying, right? They weren't surviving.
Mm,
Today we're surviving. A lot of people with HIV are
Yes.
surviving, and the next generation is moving the people up. So I am so incredibly impressed with young people.
yeah, thank you. So we're at 5:30, which is sort of our suggested end time. And I say suggested because I'm all about suggested time today. It seems those of you who are confused with our announcements about time, my apologies. Blame it on me. I'm having I have entered the non-binary time complex where time shifts and changes. So um yeah, so I just want to wrap up by asking, like, is there anything else you want to share? Any kind of like, messages, wishes, anything? I mean, you've said so much, an incredible amount of amazing information, but if there is anything else you would like to share, uh, now is the time. And then I will do a little bit of announcement of what's to come at CLAGS.
I do.
Go ahead.
Right. Uh, the one thing I want to say is for most activists, there's no retirement plan. All right. You get involved in it because it's part of who you are. It's a passion you've got. It may not pay much. It may not pay at all to some people doing it. If you have the resources to support activists and advocates, please think about helping people like Jennifer, donating to Gen Law Project or CLAGS, so that so that we can keep going, right? I'm on the older side of things, right? So give money to Jennifer and help her out. I need a car, but no. We need just minimal things in order to survive. And if you can get out and be an activist, it, it's scary at times. It's rewarding. It gives meaning to life. So, all right, that's it for me.
Oh, thank you. Jennifer, do you want to give us?
Yes, I'm gonna echo what Jen said. In this world where I'm at now, the Gender Project is my baby. She is my priority. That is my little cubby hole to make sure that I create a legacy and always be able to give to the LGBT community upon reentry after incarceration. And you can reach me via Instagram or TikTok. Jennifer Love 1976, JenniferLove 1976. Um, and on both of those, the link to the Gender Project is there to make a donation, or you could just go straight to Gender Project, which is JenLoveProject.org. That's JenLoveProject.org. Understand no donation is too small, and every dime I get is accounted for with an accounting, so it's not in my pocket, and it helps me buy the things that I need to keep our members coming home happy as possible. And if you have a link or a connection to a bigger org that doesn't mind physically donating products, to me, by sure, connect with me and let me know, and we can make that happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. I'm also, since the two of us, and I think there's more of us maybe somewhere. I don't know if people are still on in here. We're all working. I think both of you mentioned we both work with Queer Liberation March, Reclaim Pride. So that's going to be coming up in a in a spring. Again, seasons, times. So if you want to learn more about that organization, I just dropped the site in chat. CLAGS has a big event coming up. So there's a few things. You can go to our website, which is clags.org, to learn about our events. This year we have Queers of Color and Trans of Color series, where we have a variety of speakers sharing their work. And then we have an upcoming event, one of our large events, which is December 7th, and it's in person. It's a hybrid in person and online, and it's a lecture by Kessler winner E. Patrick Johnson, Queer Studies, a Postscript. And so I think Laura is going to drop that link so people can sign up, register. Thank you, Laura. So there are many events, there are many things going on. I would say for me, it's like whatever you're doing and whichever way you can, big or small, you have to judge your own sort of like ability to get engaged. But I would say to me, the worst thing is doing nothing, because sometimes it feels like doing nothing, it may feel safer, but I do believe that we can all do something to make this world better. And um, and this may mean love the trans person in your life, love trans people in your life, tell them you love them, take care of them, make them, if you're like, I can't participate for whatever reason in larger actions or do something like that, how about make a dinner for your trans friend? And if you don't have one, then ask yourself, why don't you have one? And support trans people in your life. So sometimes, sometimes it's as small as like, right, as take them out for a movie or something, have them a place where they can feel safe and loved and rested. And people who are activists in your life, give them love. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you all, and hope to see you again in the future. Yes, I think I can do that, Jennifer. I feel like you make this lovely heart that I always feel. So thank you all. Have a